So, good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar on rearing pet lambs. So, I'm Molly from Bonanza, and I'm joined with Tom Warren and Will Roobottom from Cowley Hill Farm. So, just a little bit of housekeeping just while we get started. So, first of all, the comments will be monitored. So, if you haven't seen the message in the chat, there's a Q&A. If you can please put all of your comments in there and we'll get back to you. We're going to be doing some polls throughout the webinar. I will let you know when they're coming up. If you can click submit when you put your answer in, then it'll be saved. At the end, there'll be a feedback form. I know a few of you have asked me about how do I get my hat. So we'll put a form at the end and you can put your address in and some feedback as well. So just go through the agenda. We're going to introduce ourselves, and then Tom is going to go through some lamb rearing and trial work. And then we've got a Q&A with myself and Will. And then I'm going to be going through the costs of rearing pet lambs and also Ewe-reka lamb milk replacer. And then we've also got a Q&A at the end where you can ask myself and Will some questions. So I'm Molly from Bonanza. I'm from North Warwickshire and from the dairy farm at home. I've been with Bonanza for 4.5 years and I cover the Midlands and Wales. Over to Tom.
So I'm Tom Warren. I'm the Managing Director of Bonanza Calf Nutrition. I've worked in the milk replacer industry, designing diets for lambs and calves for nearly 40 years. It feels like over 40 years. And I also farm a small flock of Easy Care and Chevy crosses on the Dublin Mountains in Ireland.
Hello, I'm Will Roobottom from Cowley Hill Farm in Staffordshire, a family farm. We have 2 enterprises on the farm where we produce hay and haylage for the equine world. And then I've come into the farm and started a flock of sheep. We're now running about 270 clean breeding ewes, looking to increase numbers through breeding our own replacements mainly. And we also have started a more commercial clean flock where we cross with Innovis, Aberblack rams, as well as New Zealand Suffolks.
Okay, so thank you all for joining. And we have had over 300 registrations for this event tonight, which is fantastic. And, we're finally getting paid for what we need to produce good lambs. And with the number of attendees tonight, maybe the wool price will go up because we've got to knit many hats to honor our commitment for this event. But as Yogi Berra, the famous baseball player, said, the future, it ain't what it used to be. So the lamb price is good at the moment. We can only put our best foot forward. But if we do the orphan lamb well, they'll be gone in 12 to 16 weeks. So let's hope the price is still the same or even better. So the first thing we've got to do is kind of define the pet lamb. And we've got 3 lovely lambs here, but I don't think these are kind of our traditional pets. Not when they initially start as a pet. Often we find in the field hungry. The mother has no milk, or they've been abandoned, or the mother's dead, or they're a triplet or quad. So they start life, with a chance of a high mortality rate. They've had probably not a lot of colostrum. And I'll explain later that often even a triplet that does get colostrum, they're still behind the curveball because they don't have a lot of energy. And we'll just go through how powerful lamb milk is and colostrum is. So, the triplet is always going to get far less than the single. So it's just going to be much more vulnerable in that first early period of life. Sorry. So if we look at, again, and I'll be talking about 2 types of pet lambs, ones that we're going to rear for replacements and the others that we rear for fattening. But, we've got to get these lambs going. They've got to be 15 kilos at weaning if they're going for replacements. They've got to be doing 200 grams a day right through to going to the ram. And they've got to keep performing and have a long life. So, the pressure is on for them. And as I said before, they don't have the best and most auspicious start either to their lives. And the first thing is colostrum. And, in a study completed in 2020, they found colostrum when they measured it on a refractometer was quite good. They had, 75% of the colostrum was good, but 25% wasn't. And they put that down to ewe nutrition, your concentrate feeding, your silage, crude protein, and your supplements. So you really need to get this right and discuss it with your nutritionist, the person who's producing the feed, get your size tested, select your supplements carefully because this is the first feed their condition, how they were tupping, their age, all those things can have a factor on lambs and their long term prognosis. And again, a good way of just assessing where you are is testing your colostrum. Um, and both the quality and the quantity. And this refractometer, which measures the solids content, is a good indicator. You can also use this to test the mixing of your milk replacer and the mixing and the accuracy of your machines as well, if you're using machine feeder to feed orphan lambs. And again, we talked about singles and triplets, and the problem with a triplet is the energy they get actually from colostrum. They get enough IgG from the colostrum, but they're only getting about half the energy that a single gets. And this is why they're so vulnerable to hypothermia, to starvation. And again, feeding them some milk replacer as a fire brigade method to get them really going in day 2 and day 3 before they go out can have a really positive effect on them. Twins are also a small twin can benefit from that, but this is the real problem that you just don't have enough energy. And when we look at ewe milk, um, it is much thicker than cow milk or goat milk. It's much higher in fat, much higher in protein, and its calorific value is almost double. So it's a really potent feed. And if in Bonanza we've always had a philosophy of looking behind those numbers and looking at what the lamb actually really needs. And there's a lot of stuff we can't analyze, but that's often the most important stuff. So getting the nutrition right for the baby lamb and producing really good products can have a huge effect on the lambs and providing it in the quantity of it as well. So when we look at rearing systems, there's two distinct types. The bottle feeding is great for fire brigade method. You hasn't come to milk yet. Bad weather. You just want to again keep that energy level up in those baby lambs. A poor twin or a triplet. But if you go to the next picture, which is where lambs are fed on a simple ad lib system, so you've got a bucket, lid's extremely important, and you buy the equipment in your local agricultural supplies. You can mix that milk up there. They can drink it ad lib, and those lambs will be the same as your singles. And if done right, they will be the first lambs to go out of your farm if they're going to be fattened. You can also go on to machines, and the machines are very good. But again, the siting and setup of those machines is extremely important. Make sure the drainage flows away from where the lambs are sitting, and it's the same with the simple system in the middle. You just make sure your bedding and your floor is not keeping the lambs cold and damp and wet. The second thing you need with a machine is make sure you've got a header tank to keep consistent water, because the water actually determines the concentration that it's mixed. If you've got variable flow water, you'll have a variable mix going into the lambs, which can be dangerous. And again, once that's set up, you can calibrate it yourself or using a refractometer and just calibrate it every so often to make sure that it's been consistent. But all those systems work well. But if you want to get your lambs fattened, uh, and the best way is the ad lib system. So, and again, just looking at how lambs drink, and lambs are actually they are little and often feeders. People often say that about calves, but calves aren't. But lambs are little and often drinkers. And in this trial done in France, they looked at, first of all, the number of meals that the lambs drank. And the male animals are in blue, and the female animals are in red. And you can see they drank up to 11 times a day, which is why on a bottle, it's very difficult to feed the lamb enough milk to really achieve its potential growth rate. So we can see there that females go for the first weeks and really right throughout the rearing period, they drank or they went to the feeder far more. And they also spent more time, the females again in red, spent more time on the feeder than the male animals. Um, but so you would presume that the females drink more than the males. But actually, and again, the males are in blue. The male animals the rams drank more per meal, and they drank more milk each day than the females. So there's a very big difference, and I think for lamb health and welfare, it's often worth just noting that. So the conclusion was that lambs spend the males spent less time in the teat, but they consumed 400 mils more than the females. And they also found in that trial that lambs also congregated, so they had particular feeding times. So it wasn't right throughout the day. So it's very important then for females to have more access to teats. So we often say between 6 and 10 teats, for 6 and 10 animals per teat. So with females, you really want 6, and with rams, it's better to be closer to 10, or you can be closer to the 10. But with the males, you've got to watch out for gorging, and you've got to ensure the machine doesn't run or the bucket doesn't run out of milk. So if at possible, it's better to actually separate the males and the females, and from the point of view of management, and particularly because if the males are going for fattening, you should wean them as early as possible. Keep them on dry feed. Don't let them out, and get them to market very, very quickly. With the females, because you want to try and develop that rumen and get that rumen developed so that you can get them onto forage and to grass very, very quickly. It's probably worth keeping them on the milk slightly longer. So if you can't afford it, to have the groups separate, and also when the males go on to dry feed, you've got to watch out for things like urinary calculi. So again, if you've got one pen with all males, and you can sort of really spend more time just going through those. And again, just some trial work we've done on ourselves on the potential of lambs if fed properly. Now this is an exceptional flock. The lamb there, 7.3 kilos at birth. It's almost double what you find in some other flocks. And we didn't just double the birth weight in 8 weeks. We almost increased it by 5-fold. And if you look at the growth rates there on the average daily live weight gains, we'd find farms with Jersey calves probably only achieve those average daily live weight gains. So that lamb was finished and ready to hang up at 8 weeks of age. Again, those lambs are fed ad lib on a Brit mix feeder, so it required an automatic powder. But that shows what you can do. But they were exceptional stock, I should say. And this is a bunch of animals we bought online again to test all different ranges of lambs. And again, we just want to share with you some of their growth rates and point out a few features as well of fattening pet lambs. And again, you can see there on the bottom, the average was an average twin or triplet. But their second weighing at 16 days gave us a growth rate of nearly 500 grams a day as a group. Those lambs are all finished at sort of 12, 13 weeks. And you can see there that we already get a carcass weight, an average carcass weight of 18.5 kilos. Only one lamb, I think 129, actually was below spec. Um, but it was the lightest lamb that went to the factory. But most of them were under 40 kilos because you're going to get a very high kilo percentage. You see, a lot of them there were close to 50%. And this is a trick that you don't have to wait until the lamb is 45, 50 kilos to market because they'll have lower gut fill because they're eating concentrates and they're a younger lamb. They will have a much, much higher kilo percentage. So, keep watching these lambs as you're fattening them. And when they get in those 35, 40 kilos, particularly if the prices start to fall in the summer, you can get them to market much, much quicker. And about weaning, most of our farmers wean between 35 and 40 days, particularly with the males. And they abruptly wean because, again, we've seen there with the males that, they gorge a lot. And when you try and play around with the reducing the volume or making it weaker or restricting the animals, you can risk getting ruminal bloat with those lambs. So get them off it quickly. Make sure they have fresh water you would drink long before they're weaned. But this water has to be really very palatable and appealing, so it can't be frozen at any stage because you've got to encourage dry feed intake. Get them up to about 200 grams of dry feed a day, then cut them off. But make sure you've got that water always there until they're slaughtered and they go out in grass. With the ewe lamb that's going for breeding, you can keep them on a bit longer, up to 8 weeks. Introduce obviously the concentrates, same story, water, but then start introducing fiber and restrict the amount of cake that you're giving them to try and get that rumen really well developed so that when you put them out of grass, they can utilize the grass and achieve their weights if you're going to breed them in the first season. So that's really the essence of rearing. It's the animal has massive potential, and if you can harness that potential, keep an eye on their health, watch them, transition them over to dry feed, and then check them regularly to see when they hit those weights that they can actually go to slaughter. And it can be over, the whole process can be over in 12 to 16 weeks. Okay, so thank you very much, and I'm going to pass you back to Mollie.
So you've said before that you've got pedigree cleans and Aber Blacks. What's the choice for those breeds?
So with the clean ewe, when I started with the flock 10 years ago, I was looking for a easy, manageable ewe. I didn't have much experience, and they stood out to me, especially with the low risk factor of being able to be a self-replacing flock. So all my ewes at home, we breed our own replacements, which lowers risk of bringing in disease into the flock. As well as that, the ewes are a great all-round maternal ewe. They produce high-quality lambs, purebred or crossed, and they're really milky and just very maternal. The reason we do cross a few is just for our local butcher, and they demand a bit more of a carcass on the ewe, a bit more carcass on the lamb, where the Suffolks and the Aber Blacks come in, whereas I'd say the Clins are more of a supermarket lamb. They're 3 RLs, and that is what 80%, 85% of the UK market demand, whereas our local butcher likes a bit more shape, but that is a very low percentage of what the normal demand is for lambs. So we just find normally the Clins are a great dual purpose lamb, and we just got a small amount of Suffolk and Aber Black lambs on the side, really. They're just mainly to put onto our ewes that aren't good enough for the A flocks. We run an A flock, B flock system, all the pedigrees that self-replace, and if they don't meet the grade, we cross them. So it's a way of using the ewes, even if they're not good enough for us for our own replacements.
So the second question is, so this will be your 5th year using Shine Ewe-reka.
Yeah.
So can you just go through your pet lamb routine, just from sort of start to finish really of what you do?
Yeah, that's fine. So the cade lambs on the farm, we've used Shine Eureka because ever since we found it 5 years ago, it's definitely the best product on the market. We've tried loads of other ones the 5 years before that, and we just find that the lambs thrive off Shine because they're basically the same as what they would be off the ewe. Uh, my protocol is as soon as I get, say, a triplet, we always try and milk colostrum off of the ewe. If we don't quite have enough high quality colostrum, we do use replacers or off of another ewe with higher quality colostrum, and then they get put into the cave pen where they're fed. What would be probably every 2-3 hours to begin with, and then the time expands throughout the weeks, and then from about 6 weeks onwards, we are feeding the lambs at once, twice a day, and then once we get to 8 weeks, a straight cut wean them off the milk straight. And during this time, we put the lambs on corn, so little lamb pellets and hay, as well as fresh bedded straw every day, with the allowance of fresh water as well.
When you've got a lot of lambs, you use a heat wave machine.
Yeah.
So how many lambs would you have per teat for that?
So per teat, I try and put 4 or 5 lambs max, so they're not competing too much for that teat. So we tend to have little pens of like a 6 by 4 foot hurdle, a bit like what you'd have for lambing pens. And then as they get a bit older, we put the batches together because obviously they have less demand as in per hour for that teat, and they'll have a bigger feed less regularly, if that makes sense.
So in your larger pens, you'd be looking at around sort of like 8 to 10 lambs per teat.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
that's good. And what would be your cleaning regime of that? Sort of changing the teats every day?
So for the heat wave, every morning we have a special chemical. It's not bleach, but it's like a bleach-like chemical that we put through the system to make sure it's all cleaned out. Else the fat out of the milk builds up and it's not nice. And then same again with the teat, swapping them regularly every day and just making sure that there's a good quality feed to the lambs. We don't want them to run out of milk, so making that every 12 hours and just refilling as we go and making sure that they've got that milk they need.
Excellent. And when just a few more questions on the heat wave, when you're putting them onto the adlib machine, I assume you're making sure that they're full so they don't gorge on the teat.
Yeah. So that's one thing we've tried really hard not to do, and that's put hungry lambs onto adlib feed, because obviously they gorge and then they end up with bloat, and then normally disasters happen. So the main thing is making sure the lamb is fit and healthy and full up before they go onto that adlib feed.
Okay. So you have a slightly different weaning protocol, I'd say, to a lot of farmers.
Yeah.
So I'd say farmers with big bunches would usually wean around 35 days, or when they're eating around 300 grams of creep. But you keep yours indoors, don't you, before you turn them out?
Yeah. We've done a bit of a trial. We've put them outside within a week of them being weaned, and then we've left it a couple of weeks. But we found leaving them inside on hay and creep for about 4 weeks before putting them out just means that they get a bit more stable on hard feed before you're putting them out to the conditions. It's just what we've found that works well for us. I know there's horses for courses for different farms, but I found that works best for us, keeping them in on hay, creep and water, not forgetting, for about a month after they're weaned. So until they're about 12 weeks old, and then put them out. And then we have even had lambs that have been nearly ready to go at that stage. Some of the Suffolk crosses, they absolutely fly.
What would you say your average daily gain would be for the lambs?
Normally, everything up to that 12-week mark. This last year was 330, and I think the Cades were just behind, so I think they're about 280. But for us, that's been the normal daily live weight gain of lambs in years gone past. It's we're well happy if they're achieving that compared to the normal lambs. Like you can have cages that just seem to don't grow, so to have them growing that well, uh, we're extremely happy with how they perform.
So we're coming into lambing season, so I know you're going to be lambing soon.
Yeah.
So what would be your sort of hints and tips for farmers if you do anything different or something that you found might be useful?
Three key factors that I kind of work from is colostrum is key. So every lamb that every ewe that lambs, we test the milk of every ewe. We test that the bags are working to make sure they've got good quality colostrum. And if I think it is a bit thin, we put it on a refractometer to make sure that it's of the quality that the lambs need. And we find if they have good colostrum of the right quantity, then the lambs will thrive. Another thing is hygiene. We muck out pens after every ewe. I know it sounds a lot of work, and it is a lot of work, but it does save those lambs. We lime every pen, rebed it with fresh straw, and we find that really cuts down the numbers of any E. coli outbreaks or anything like that. And then the other one would be ewe-wise is nutrition, just making sure that you get your silage or haylage or hay tested before lambing and able to come up with the right nutrition for that ewe, because that is what drives the colostrum that's going into the lamb in the first place.
So I just wanted to touch on this. So there's a few news articles here. So lamb prices are on the rise, and that may be because that Ramadan is earlier this year compared to last year. So with lamb milk prices, which are comparable to last year, and also concentrate feeds coming back, we can see that rearing pet lambs is becoming more economical. So this was just a basic costing that I've done on an ad lib feeding system. So using roughly 13 kilos of powder, it's costing per lamb just over €39 or just over £33. Estimated 32 kilos of concentrate feed. We've got straw, miscellaneous. I know that people will have all sorts of different costs in this. So I've just put a rough cost there. So the total cost of rearing a pet lamb is roughly just over €66 or just over £57. So using the data that we had from the study earlier on, which Tom showed you of the nice lamb photo. So I've just used those as an example. Daily live weight gains average of 484, kill out percentage just over 48%. So if we're looking at Feb 2025 prices, so £7 a kilo or €9 a kilo, if you look at your rough cost, it would be a rough profit of somewhere between just over £72 or just over €100. Again, this isn't factoring in sort of electric, rent, so it's just a rough figure to show you. So moving on to Shine Ewe-reka, I'm sure most of you have heard of it if you're on this webinar. So what's all these have in common? They're all made with ewe's milk. So to help improve lamb health and performance, Ewe-reka is made with whey products from ewe's milk. So you can see here that I've included some examples of the cheese made with ewe's milk. So you've got your Roquefort there and your Manchego. So we've taken the byproducts of this cheese production to make a lamb milk replacer that's as close as the mother's milk as possible. So why do we include ewe's milk in our formulation? So first of all, ewe's milk is natural in antibodies, and these are specific to sheep diseases. So in terms of lambs, will be healthier and stronger. It's also higher palatability, and it helps to eliminate bloat and digestive upsets, therefore maximises lamb performance. So because of those 2 points, lambs reared on Ewe-reka have achieved a daily live weight gain of up to 500 grams a day. It also smells and tastes like mum's milk. So the used milk aroma creates a natural transition from udder to powder. So it's a fully instant fixed formula, and it mixes in warm or cold water. So how much do I need to rear a lamb? So that really does depend on your system and also how long you're keeping the lambs on the powder. So it can be anywhere between 11.5 kilos and 15 kilos. So bottle feeding lambs, we'd recommend feeding 200 grams made up to a litre of water. And this is because lamb performance is dictated by farm management and how many times the lambs receive their feed per day. So Tom touched on this with the male and females, how they actually had maybe even 9 feeds a day. So bumping up those solids does help. So compared to your ad-lib machine, so I'd recommend 18% dry matter, so 180 grams a litre made up to a litre of water. So lambs like feeding little and often, and this replicates their nursing behaviour from their mothers. So Ewe-reka comes in various different pack sizes. So you've got 20 kilo bags, which come in the standard, which are the blue bags, and the free flow, which are the pink bags. You've also got 10 kilos, which are in the standard, and also 4.5 kilo buckets, which are also in the standard. So just to go through which systems they work with all systems, it's just different bags. So Ewe-reka standard suits your bottle feeding, your ad-lib feeding, and your Forza Technic. So anything that doesn't require a free-flowing machine, basically. So Ewe-reka Free Flow is specifically for these machines. So your Brit Mix, your Lactec, and your Volac Gravity blue fed feeder. So the Free Flow does suit bottle fed feeding, it does suit ad-lib feeding, but it is specific for these machines because it requires a free flow powder. So I'm sure all of you have followed us on socials because you're on this webinar. However, I've just put the tags there for our socials. We also have a newsletter as well. So if you aren't currently signed up to that and you'd like to be, please put a comment in the form at the end. So where can I buy Shine Ewe-reka? So if you visit our website, bonanzacalf.ie, there's a stockist page for Ewe-reka. So we are stockists all over UK and Ireland. I mean, you can find your nearest stockist there. Or you can also DM us on socials or email us at ewe-reka@bonanzacalf.com. So in conclusion, Ewe-reka is made with 20% used milk inclusion, improving overall lamb health and performance. We've seen average daily live weight gains of up to 550 grams a day with lambs fed on Ewe-reka. It's a fully instant fixed formula which mixes in cold and warm water, and it's available in 20 kilos with a free flow option, 10 kilos, and a 4.5 kilo. So I'm just going to go through some of the questions that we've got in for you, Will. So I'll just start with the first question. So what was your scanning rate this year and how's that compared to last year?
So this year we scanned at 186%, and last year we scanned at 173%. We had a slight problem with compiler back to last year with all the flooding, and they think that the dirty water through flooding affected the grazing land and led to a few more abortions and barren ewes last year, whereas this year it's more where we'd like it.
Okay. And what is your average kill out percentage?
For the Aberblack and Suffolk lambs, getting towards 50%, and the Clins probably 46, 47, just slightly lower, just as they're more a maternal breed.
Okay. I've got a question for Tom here. So should I let my lambs out after weaning? You're responsible for that.
Again, I think that if they're males, they're just going to eat grass and they're not going to perform. they just can't have physically the rumen isn't big enough. So your growth rates are just going to tail off, and you're going to be looking at that lamb over the summer and the autumn. If you keep them in, again with the females, I wouldn't really be letting them out till 12 weeks of age. They have a good rumen that they can maintain and grow like grass, and then you've got to watch your parasites as well. You know, again, make sure they're vaccinated as well. So possibly only the females should be put out after the other lambs are weaned. That'd be my philosophy really, because they don't have that room of development. And again, as I say, the males, you're better off just pushing them. That's the best.
Okay. What is
Okay.
your vaccination program, Will?
So for there's a few things where I'm on Heptavac P. I know it's been a struggle to get hold of this year, but look, the local vets do a lot of pre-ordering, so the use get that, and then we're also on Toxo and Enzovac, as well as a Campylobacter vaccine because of last year. So they're what we use.
Yeah. Okay. And Tom, are skim milks better, or would you recommend a whey?
Well, I think the skim milk is very important for the calf, because the calf takes big quantities of milk and has to slowly digest them. For the lamb, it's not important because they're drinking lots, drinking every 2 or 3 hours. Um, but the problem is the skim is much more difficult to manage in an ad lib system. The pipes can get coagulated with milk, particularly if they're not cleaned out properly. The milk can coagulate in the heat wave as well, and also in warm weather. If you've got a cold feeding system, it can also start to curdle there. So whey is best for ad lib systems and best for lambs, really. There's no advantage with skim. They're very different animals in that respect.
So we've had quite a few questions come in. So I'm just going to ask Tom one final question, and then we will send over the form on the chat for you to fill in to redeem your hat. So overall, what would you say is the best way to wean a lamb?
Well, I think abruptly. I think it's you're going to have the only disadvantage is the lamb's going to maybe be a bit discommoded for a day or two. He's got to up his game in terms of his room development. But the downside of not doing it abrupt is the lamb's getting ruminal bloat and dying because it goes into the wrong chamber because they just gorge too much, particularly males. So I think abrupt is just the best way of doing it. If you've got a lamb, probably I don't know what a pet lamb is going to be worth today, and then you've put sort of 33 pounds worth of milk into it. You've really all your investment done at that stage. So it's
Okay.
best to avoid bloat. That's the number one.
Okay. So yes, we've had a lot of questions. So what we'll do is we will answer them on our socials. So if you look out for those in the next few days. So I think Liz is going to pop the form in the chat. So that's just a feedback form, and also if you could put your address in, and then we can send you your pink hat. So thank you very much for joining us for our first webinar. I hope that you found it useful, and also thank you to Will for joining us as